منتدى جدة الاقتصادي 2012. ما بعد الآفاق، اليوم نبني اقتصاد الغد. أهلا ومرحبا بكم في الجلسة الثانية لهذا اليوم بعنوان أعمال البر العربية، تعزيز فن العطاء وإنصاف المجتمع. يدير هذه الجلسة السيد هاني خوجا، المدير الشريك استشارات إكسير للشركات، ومن المحاورين الدكتور همايون دار، الرئيس التنفيذي BME الإسلامية، والدكتور طارق شيما، مؤسس المؤتمر العالمي الإسلامي للأعمال الخيرية، والأستاذ أنطوان بيلير، المستشار في العلاقات الإنسانية، أطباء بلا حدود، وهيرمان بودة، العضو المنتدب لشركة ماكنزي أند كومباني مكتب الرياض. فرحبوا بهم إلى المنصة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. We're going to talk about philanthropy in Saudi Arabia and the region. I'd like to introduce the guests today. Professor Humayon Dar, I hope I pronounced that correctly. He is the president and CEO of EdBiz Consulting, which is specialized in Islamic financial services consultancy. He has expertise in structuring Islamic products for Western banks and Western fund managers. And he issues an annual report focused on global Islamic finance report on Islamic philanthropy and social responsibility. The second guest is Dr. Tariq Cheema. He's the founder and CEO of the World Congress of Muslim Philanthropists. He's joining us today. He lives in the US, I believe. The third guest is Herman Bode, so I got that. He, for 2 years, led McKinsey's global philanthropic practice, and currently he's the managing partner in Saudi Arabia for McKinsey. And then we have Mr. Antoine Bieler, who is the humanitarian diplomacy advisor for Medecins Sans Frontières, based in Brussels, correct?
I'm in the region.
From the region. Okay, so you're representing the region. I'd like to start with Professor Humayon to tell us a little bit about, Saudi people are very giving. Okay, they're one of the most, in terms of giving in Saudi, we're one of the top countries in the world. However, I've noticed that most charities in Saudi are constantly fundraising. They're constantly in the crisis of trying to raise money. So tell me, how would you advise charities in Saudi Arabia to ensure sustainable support?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Absolutely, you're right that there is an Islamic and Arab tradition in favor of giving. Giving is very important, but giving it in a responsible way, it is even more important. In Islamic societies, there is a lot of emphasis on charitable contributions and philanthropic contributions as well. And most of the effort is actually on giving for relief purposes. So the money comes into the system and leaves the system very, very quickly. Although this is a very, very important activity, however, this doesn't help sustainability. I have known some charities which raise millions of dollars on a very frequent basis, but they don't have any money in hand. So whenever there is a crisis, they go out and raise money and spend. I believe that sustainability aspect is very, very important. We must introduce a mechanism in charitable giving and philanthropic contributions, which must ensure that asset accumulation is there. So we bring the money into the system, create assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries, manage those assets on a long-term basis, get the returns out of them, and give the benefits of those returns to the beneficiaries. The advantage of this would be that there would be long-term assets available for the social causes. Okay. And these projects could be directly relevant to society. At the same time, the assets could be the ones which have indirect relevance, but they have direct relevance to the welfare of the direct or immediate beneficiaries. For example, charitable money can be used to develop railway, to develop ports, and there has been a long history in Islamic countries of creating awqaf. Almost all the economic activity in the Muslim world used to be run by the awqaf foundations or waqf. This has not been the case in the recent past, and I believe that if we go back to this model of awqaf and bring some new dimensions into it in light of the practice in the West and elsewhere, this can bring a lot of new benefits to the societies and communities in the Muslim world as well as in other parts of the world as well. One way of, if you allow me to continue, one way of bringing a lot of new money into charitable sector is to create incentives for people to give. In the post 9/11 world, there are a lot of disincentives for Muslims to give, primarily because of the restrictions coming from the United States and other European countries. There is a lot of scrutiny on Muslim giving. Hence, the incentives for Muslims to give, especially the large amounts of money, they are less. So if we can come up with an incentive mechanism for people to start giving and giving more, and then if we have this management of money function, management of charitable money function brought into the system, this can bring a lot of new assets to our communities. And of course, we can contribute to human civilization as well on a sustainable basis. One example which I would like to highlight, which is related to incentives, is something which is on the screen. This is a simple example of introduction of incentivization. If, for example, a government wants to raise about 100 million in whatever currency, say $100 million, it can use the idea of prizes. It can announce a prize of 20 million for the individual organization or corporate which would contribute most of the money. And if we have this open bid model, i.e. whosoever contributes is known to other people as well, then we can have, for example, if there are 10 people who would participate in this activity, there would be a spectrum of giving by the people. The individual or corporation which would win would be the one which has contributed the highest amount of money. In this case, this is 21 million. The net effect for this organization would be giving 21 million and winning a prize of 20 million and having this net benefit of 1 million. Other people, of course, they would be contributing to the pool only. This is not a sustainable one. Once this 21 million organization comes on the board, other people who cannot contribute 21 million, they would not like to be part of the race. So there is some problem with this open bid model. If you go for this closed bid model means the contributors, their amounts are not known when they contribute. Then in this case, those who have large amounts of money to give into charity, they would come into play. They would calculate the economics, and mostly those who would like to contribute 20 million or more, or slightly less, they would be in the race. In this case, almost double of the money, of the previous money, can be raised by the government, out of which only 20 million would be given to the highest bidder, which in this example is the one which contributes 28.5 million. Okay. This has its advantages, but its biggest disadvantage is that only the upper side of the society would contribute in this one. If we have another model, which is not given over here, this is actually the draw-based system, i.e. anyone who contributes to this pool have an equal chance of winning. In that case, we can raise a huge amount of money in any given society. In case of Saudi Arabia, our estimate is that between 1.5 to 2 billion US dollars on an annual basis can be raised if an incentive-based scheme like this is introduced in the society.
Okay, can I just move to Dr. Tariq? Since you are exposed to philanthropists across the Muslim world, can you give us an idea of what the difference is between, let's say, Saudi philanthropists and the rest of the Muslim world?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would like to begin by referring to the opening plenary of this forum, where we have learned that the overall volume of the emerging markets, their economic potential by 2020 will be around 60% of the world economy. But on the other hand, seems to be less likely that this prosperity is going to decrease the gap between the haves and have-nots in the emerging markets. So if you look at one side, we have a trend where the prosperity is on the growing side, but poverty is also on the growing side. So there has to be something done different than maybe what the models are in the developed world. And having said that, if we look now at the philanthropy, by any numbers, Gulf region, Saudi Arabia in particular, Muslim world in general, is one of the most generous part of the world in terms of giving. And even the per capita or the percentage of the GDP, Muslim world and Saudi Arabia and GCC countries in particular are way ahead than of the Western world. So I think the potential is there. Now the question is how we are going to unlock this potential. And I think that is where we have certain limitations. We have limitations in terms of our capacity, whether we call it a professionalism or the sophistication that is we see very commonly in the Western philanthropic sector. In addition, there is the limitation of the focus area. So a lot of Muslim giving or the Arab giving actually is only focusing on 2 to 3 major areas. So there is a limitation of the focus. And we need to bring more issues to address, all the way from environment to the youth to the gender and so on, and the education and higher education, particularly science, technology, and innovation. The other challenge that we have, besides the limitation that are inherited as the Arab or Muslim giving, are the number of external challenges. We are dealing with a pressure, with a negative image that has been around for last decade, whereby the Muslim giving or Arab giving is not that clean per se, but that is not the case. The case is that like any other giving, whether it is a faith-based or it is secular, we are as good as anybody else. It's just that we need to bring more professionalism, we need to enhance our skills so that we can be more strategic in our giving, and we are not just give the money and feel good, but actually we think from the mindset of a social investors. Just the way you infuse your business sense into your capital investment, we have to think the same way how we are giving money to the poor. That means how we can partner with them and how we can incentive that based on the result.
Herman, can you just building on this, if you can talk a little bit about the strategies that you would advise a philanthropic organization, what are the 2 or 3 points that you would really focus on?
Sure. But before I do that, let me give 2 numbers to support the 2 previous speakers. The US philanthropic activity is about 2% of GDP. Most Western European countries, it's a lot below that. And in Saudi Arabia, it's 5%. So you talk about order of magnitude 2 times or more than 2 times what other countries are doing. So I think the issue is not how much you're doing, the issue is much more what you do with it. Other number, and that is in stark contrast to, let's say, what's happening in Western environments. 90% of philanthropic activity in Saudi Arabia is totally unfocused. I think, as my colleague has said, it focuses on the giving, it's on many, many small causes, but there's no particular team that stands out. And so back to the question you asked me, what advice or sort of what could we learn from, other people? The most important, I think, and certainly given that you give so much, is, what's the impact? And so whenever you look at philanthropic activities, I would argue, look at its reach, look at its relevance. And if you want to have reach and relevance, you got to make choices. So in other words, you got to focus. Okay? And if you look at all the major philanthropic activities, the Bill and Melinda Gates is obviously the most well-known and one of the largest, but they pick 1 or 2 teams and they focus on it. They're sort of only doing that. They measure their impact and they make sure their impact is real and is actually scalable. And so I think maybe the biggest, let's say, lesson or hopefully something to look forward to in Saudi Arabia is, what are the 2 or 3 topics that you would pick? And given the plenty of resources, then how will you measure impact? And be ruthless about it and think through not about just the immediate, let's say, target group, the people that would benefit from it, but how do you scale it up to a level where it becomes relevant for your total population or for whatever target group you have selected. Okay?
Antoine, we recently did a study in Saudi about the attractiveness for local talent to work in the charity sector. And we found that it's not very attractive. People either prefer to work in government or private sector or starting their own business, but when it came down to charities, it wasn't very appealing to them. How do you overcome that in your organization?
Well, it's a 40 years old history, Doctor Without Borders. It just turned 40 last December, so it's also 40 years of experience and of trying to find out how to motivate the people that are working for us. It's the biggest medical humanitarian organization in the world with 26,000 staff. So of course it entails that we are in a permanent recruiting process worldwide. And it's a very rigorous process. I think this is something very important because it's not because we work in charities that anyone should be given a role or given a task. I think that the skills and the quality of the people working is essential. So this rigorous process means that we reject more applicants than we do hire over the course of the year. I think another important aspect is that we have very strong criteria for the skills, like for the medical skills. But now for the motivation of the people, I think we are very much open. Charity brings people who are desiring to help, but we have people who are interested to travel, to discover cultures, to go to places they would never go as a tourist, like in Afghanistan and Somalia. People who do that a bit for money, because we do pay also some of our staff. So it's an acceptance that the reason behind a charity can be multiple. Some people do that for religious reasons as well, and also this gives us a quite rich and varied type of people working for us. The only thing we try to avoid are the two ends of the spectrum. We do not take half-hearted people, and we, of course, do not take people who want to save the planet, because you never save the planet on your own, for sure. Maybe a last point related to that. A key issue for us it's to take people who have made a choice, because once you have made a choice to be somewhere, then you are responsible. You assume a responsibility, and then people who are responsible, then they can commit and truly commit. You can give them a task, a responsibility, and they will be up to it. And this is, for us, it's a virtuous circle, because the people who are entrusted with responsibility, working for an organization like this one, then are quite proud of it and happy and ready to continue in this path.
Herman, can I ask you, I mean, you brought up a very interesting, you said that 5% of GDP in Saudi goes to charity annually. So, you know, that's about $30 billion a year in Saudi. So why do we have $30 billion on one hand, but we still have unemployment, housing issues, high obesity, all these social issues? Why do you think there's big sources but still have social issues?
Look, I was here yesterday as well, and I listened in the session around job creation. And if you excuse me, okay, I'm going to quote a colleague of mine, okay, York, at the end of the session. And he said, look, there is no silver bullet here. Okay, and yes, you're right to sort of paint a picture. On the one hand, there's a lot of, let's say, funds going into, let's say, sources that or initiatives that aim to do good, and at the same time, we still have the reality as we experience it. Now, my other answer would be, yes, there's no silver bullet, but back to my original point, focus. Again, 90% of that 30 billion is totally dispersed. Goes to, I mean, you dream it, and I'm sure it happens. Now, the contrast, or sort of alternatively, you could say, why don't we make sure that of these 30 billion, 20 or 25 billion go into one or two particular initiatives, areas, and then be rigorous, bring in professional management, so to speak, in making sure you have the impact that you desire to have with these funds. Okay? So it's a dual answer. One, it's a very complex. You don't resolve, such a big problem just like that and with one initiative. But secondly, focus.
Professor, you have something to add?
Actually, that 30 billion US dollars, which is collected or given on an annual basis in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a major chunk of that is zakat money. Zakat is primarily a relief measure. So the money comes into the system and goes. So there is no asset management function in case of zakat. Now there is a need to bring new models for zakat management. And this will address the issue of sustainability, job creation, creating new assets. The concept, mixing the concept of waqf with zakat will bring a lot of sustainability. At present, all of us, whether we are on the lower end or the very high end, when it comes to zakat, we use zakat money only for relief, which doesn't have any sustainability aspect in it.
So is this, just building on what you're saying, is there a global model somewhere globally that applies this model you're talking about?
I personally, myself, I was involved in a global project called World Zakat Fund. And the idea was to bring the zakat money from different parts of the world. And Saudi, by the way, it's the largest surplus country in the world when it comes to zakat. We divided the Muslim countries into three categories: zakat surplus countries, and as I said, Saudi was number one. Zakat deficit countries, and most of the poor Muslim countries, they fall in that category. And then zakat neutral countries, where more or less whatever is collected is distributed and dispersed locally as well. The idea was to create a fund for zakat collection, management, and disbursement. The benefit of this in the contemporary world was, number one, as I said earlier, in the Europe and America, there is a lot of scrutiny going on the Muslim giving. If you create a fund structure which is a regulated entity, whatever comes into it is accounted for. So it doesn't spill away in different sides of the box. And whatever comes out of it that actually is dispersed in a defined activity. In case of zakat, we have 8 asnaf, okay, where the money can be spent, and one of them is very general, fi sabilillah, which means in any general charitable activity. So if we create that kind of zakat fund, and OIC is behind this initiative. Sheikh Saleh Kamal was here yesterday and day before yesterday. He has been involved in another similar kind of initiative. If we bring this kind of mechanisms into zakat management, I believe that zakat only can play a tremendously important role in the economic development of the communities, countries, and of course the Muslim world, as well as the world at large.
Dr. Tariq, just from your exposure, what are the areas that Saudi is missing out in terms of areas of focus?
Well, I would say that the situation pretty much is common, not in Saudi Arabia, but most of the major Muslim countries. And the million-dollar question is, where is the impact of our giving? We are giving zakat, we are giving other sort of charity, but why we are not able to socially develop at the same speed we are developing economically. And to my experience, we need to really have a shift in our mindset. We have to revisit our strategy. And that takes down that it has to be a holistic approach, and there has to be 2 or 3 channels where we make advance simultaneously. And I will begin with education as first. And in education, there are 2 very important areas that we need to look at. And one is to introduce the culture of community service at the levels of the schools, which allows young people to be exposed to the philanthropy and to the charitable activities. And they are not left alone only by the gadgets or the cars or the prosperity that is very, very inspiring for them, but we have to give them something more powerful, something more positive. And I think that has to be somehow incorporated into our education system. The second thing is at the little bit higher level of the higher education levels to actually introduce programs that allow people to be capable to take jobs in this particular sector. So we have like business management, we are having number of other areas and disciplines, but this area particularly, which is you can call it non-profit management or charitable giving, or this has to be incorporated into the system as well.
Okay.
If you just give me, I can finish my thoughts. So education is one. On the policy area, in the policy domain, we have to be looking at what Dr. Dar has mentioned about making our zakat management system more effective, and also creating those incentives and enabling environment that encourage people to give more and actually be benefited from. And third area is the corporate sector, and the corporate sector, particularly the financial sector. I think that has a potential to be a powerhouse of the lasting change, provided they are investing into SME funds, they are investing into the Islamic microfinance, because we have seen microfinance working, but terribly failing when it is coupled with interest. So we have all the components, and we need to put them together to make a picture. So we will not see a major shift in our giving in terms of becoming from conventional where you give and forget to actually where you give and get yourself engaged, being more practical and become more strategic. We have to work on these different lines simultaneously at the education level, at the policy level, as well as the corporate sector.
Well, Antoine, I mean, one of the so I consult nonprofit organizations, and one of the biggest barriers that we face is that there's a mindset that every single riyal that is gathered has to be spent on the beneficiary, and not a big significant portion goes to the overhead, to the staff, to the leadership of the organization. Therefore, and they rely on volunteer work. Okay, so what percentage of the budget goes to staff and the team that is executing the plans and actually setting strategies and interacting with donors?
Yeah. So it's a 5% of the total budget. We have a yearly budget for 2011 of $1 billion. We are working like in 80 countries. So it's 5% of this amount that goes for the payment, I mean, administrative fees. However, there is an additional 8%, and this is a choice we have made. Doctors Without Borders do not take any governmental funds nor from institutions close to governments for reason of independence, because towards our beneficiaries in the field, we are able to tell them that we are under no political influence, that our programs are our choice. So it means that to keep receiving donation from small private individuals all over the world, we need to do a lot of fundraising. So this additional 8% goes for the fundraising, but again with the positive impact of keeping us independent from any form of political affiliation, which is nowadays a very, very serious issue. If you go to Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, Pakistan, the first thing people ask is like, who is paying you? It's one of the first questions, and it's true that being able to answer that there are only people, individuals from all over the world with small amount of money puts people at ease with our action.
Herman, just continuing on budget, how do you measure impact, and what percentage of the budget goes to research?
How do you measure impact is, of course, function of which cause do you pick. If you say, look, we're going to focus on eradicating malaria, then you measure impact by how many people on an annual basis, are suffering for malaria, and how over the following years you reduce these number of people by significant numbers up to the point where you can claim that malaria doesn't exist on the planet anymore. So that's an easy example. If you focus more on education, I think you think about, first of all, how many people do you reach? Do you reach by funding a particular university only the people that go to that university, or do you reach a total population of a country, or do you reach even a broader audience? And then what are those people doing with the type of education they get? In other words, you start measuring, people that graduate, where are they going? Do they have a job? What type of job do they have? What is their income, etc. So, the measurements or KPIs or whatever lingo you want to apply to it is really function on what is the objective function that you officially say you're going to try to solve. And that's why, again, we strongly believe in focus, because at that stage, when you really focus and you become specific, you can actually measure it a lot easier than if you stay vague.
And is there a percentage that you follow in terms of setting a research budget for a...
But research, again, is only relevant if you say, yes, I'm going to invest in research, let's say cancer research, and then even in cancer research, what type of cancer? You have, whatever, Is it blood cancer you're going to focus on? Is it breast cancer you're going to focus on? Is it, and then for which target group? And then again, it becomes very easy to follow it and to start measuring it and saying, are we focusing it to the right institution, with the right type of research, with the right distribution, or making the research available to other people? At that moment, again, it becomes much easier to follow through.
Well, I would like to say that cutting the cost or the operational cost should not always be the criteria. It's really important, particularly in the case of the Arab and Muslim world giving, that part of the grant has to be set aside for two things. One is to build the capacity of the implementers. It's very important. We are not have the same model, perhaps, work for us what works for United States of America or somewhere else. When we are giving money to XYZ entity, it is very important we make an assessment in terms of their capacity. And let's say if we have to give them 100 riyals, we better give them 90 riyals, but invest 10 riyals in their personal development or in their organizational development. And also with that sort of percentage, it's extremely important that we set aside some money, rather giving it directly to them, to basically use it for the monitoring and evaluation. Because this is going not to be, per se, a policing on them, but actually helping them to do better in future. And by that 90 riyal that they get, actually giving a result that could be worth 200 riyals.
Professor, can you give us some perspective on the environment right now of financial transactions, of transferring money globally right now? Is there any kind of, there's a fear that, spilled over from 9/11 that any kind of transfer funds will get us into a bit of trouble. So a lot of the funding has kind of remained locally. Is that still relevant?
Immediately after the 9/11, the impact was huge. Okay. I have known a number of Islamic charitable organizations in United Kingdom which suffered immensely because of this lack of flow of funds going into the Western world from the Arab countries. However, with the passage of time, I think the pressure has eased out. But still, there is a lot of scrutiny of funds originating from this part of the world and going into some other parts of the world. Funds originating from here going into the West, this is not a big concern anymore. However, there are some red spots. The countries where there is some kind of trouble, the likes of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and so on, still there is a lot of emphasis on scrutinizing these transactions from the due diligence viewpoint. And this is why I believe that it is important that the countries where charity and philanthropy is a significant component of the economic activity, they must come up with governance frameworks which are helpful for the promotion of charity and philanthropy. And with the governance, I believe that there must be an emphasis on using that money locally as well. Now, a lot of Muslims from around the world come to Saudi Arabia, okay, and they are looking for funds for their charitable projects. But I believe that there is a need for the Saudi society to use greater amounts of money which comes from charity and philanthropy locally as well, to come up with institutions which are more social in their orientation and impact.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question and then open it up to the audience. I want to ask Dr. Tariq, what are some of the global foundations that you would recommend Saudi foundations to collaborate with to not only tackle causes, but also do knowledge transfer and learn from each other in terms of raising the professionalism of the organizations? And what's the best mechanism to actually interact with these global foundations?
I touched upon the notion of change in the mindset, and I think it's very important to understand that we can't afford isolation, and we all are sharing the planet, so our opportunities as well as the risks are common. And often when we look from the lens of different segments and factions and interest, and particularly when it comes to the human well-being or social well-being or environmental well-being, I think there is more in common than is in what we have in different from each other. So it's very rational, very appropriate to basically join forces with the entities and organizations who share the same vision, who believe that the benevolence, and I would refer to the theme of this forum, that benevolence is beyond borders. It's not just my border. If there's a poverty, the poverty on either side of the Red Sea is a poverty. Hunger is hunger. It's an issue that should concern everybody, the one who is hungry and the one who is sleeping with the stomach full. So I think if we are inspired with that notion, then obviously you will find multiple partners. And that you can collaborate with. But collaboration is must, and I think it's very important that you brought this question. We have to go in terms of benevolence. We should feel comfortable to crossing the borders, the lines of differences. But at the same time, we have to be mindful that every philanthropic entity, wherever they are, whether in their north or south, they may have their different approaches. And I'll quote you one example. If we look at the food security issue, now there is one approach which is very popular in the West, and that is you go and promote corporate farming, and you try to enhance the yield, and you therefore contribute into that nation's economy or the world economy. But from maybe our perspective, this approach may not be the best for us, because this is going to lead to the community displacement. When communities are displaced from these major corporate farms, where are they going to go? They are going to actually step into the other people's territories, and that is leading to conflict. And then what's about the environmental issues? So I think the one word that I can say that should be the very, the basic thing for you to decide where you want to collaborate is actually, other than competency, is the ethics. So ethics is very important in our collaboration, because end of the day, we are doing this charity to please our creator or to feel good about it, and we really have to make sure that we do not compromise on ethics. Thank you.
Can I open it up to questions? Any questions? Okay. Whoever's closest.
Well, I have a direct question to the panel you choose. In reference to the Red Cross, my question is that how does the Red Cross, with a lot of activities, maintain the sustainability of a lot of activities, resources-wise, money-wise, and being within the law and expandability? Thank you.
Anybody an expert on the Red Cross?
I'm a former...
Excuse me? Can you try, Antoine?
Well, yeah, I'm a former, I was formerly working for the International Committee of the Red Cross. Coming back to what I said earlier, the financing of the International Red Cross is exactly revert from the one of Doctors Without Borders. 90% of their funds come from governmental funds, countries or affiliated institutions that are in charge of development and humanitarian aid in every government. And it seems they have been able over the years with their activities to continue receiving the same amount of money. Though I understood from former colleagues that, of course, the crisis in the West is having an impact on their financing.
You have something to add?
Well, I think when it comes to the humanitarian organization like Red Cross or many others, really sustainability, I would say, is somewhat difficult to achieve, because they are, for two reasons. One is that you don't know when the disaster is going to hit, whether it is a natural or man-made disaster. And secondly, that they are fairly well funded by the sovereign governments. And I think when it comes to the humanitarian organizations, you're always some sort of dependent on good support coming from the various sectors, governmental and non-governmental or communities. But when you're talking about the other entities that are there to make a social change, where you know exactly where the problem is, and you can kind of find out what is the extent of that problem, there I think that the question of sustainability is even more pertinent to see that how these organizations has to become more sustainable, because they have to continuously work on something that they know what it is.
Maybe.
If you allow me, I would like to speak in Arabic, so if you kindly put your, because it's important that I'd like to get your comments and feedback. أنا عادل بوشناق، أشتغل على وقف المعرفة والإبداع بالتعاون مع البنك الإسلامي للتنمية، وهذه مبادرة كيف نبني القدرات المحلية خاصة في الدول الإسلامية أعضاء البنك باستخدام التقنية الحديثة. ونشر المعرفة ونقل المعرفة باستخدام البوابات الإلكترونية. مجرد هذه أول مصارف الوقف ستكون البوابات الإلكترونية، لأنه نستطيع نحقق فيها نوع من الاستدامة المالية عشان الوقف يتنامى ويكبر. وأنا أشكر الجميع لأنه أفكار جميلة جدا، وإن شاء الله سأتواصل مع غالب المتحدثين وأريد تعليقهم على بعض الأفكار، لأنه مشكلة الآن الوقف العلمي هذا وقف علمي عالمي، هذا المعيار. وكان هناك اجتماع في جدة في شهر يناير حضروه من عدة دول الحمد لله، وتوصيات جيدة. بنحاول لنفعل هذه التوصيات وهذا المشروع ليرى النور بالتعاون مع جهات حكومية وإقليمية أيضا. فإذا هناك أمثلة لأوقاف علمية عالمية تستخدم التقنية الحديثة لبناء القدرات المحلية، أريد أن أعرف من المتحدثين. شكرا.
So let's take the first question is how to use modern technology to build human capacity. Herman, can you tackle that?
Look, people or foundations that exclusively focus on that, I don't know, okay? I do know a number of foundations that have, let's say, research up in their, let's say, radar screen and give substantial means to them. I think, for instance, within the boundaries of the kingdom, I think the King Faisal Foundation is one where I don't know exactly what percentage of the total they give to research, but I know it is an important part and it's right up there, okay, with a number of their other initiatives. Okay? And then I think the Ford Foundation is another one, but there are many that do that. Now, people that exclusively focus on that, I have to honestly admit, there's no one that would come to my mind. Okay?
I'd like to
that not only focus on research, but also on the use, let's say, of modern technology, social media, whatever, in propagating and distributing. That's such a specific focus that, I mean, I can do a little search and get back to you, but yeah.
I'd like to say that the King Khalid Foundation locally is focused on building human capacity among nonprofit organizations in Saudi. If you want to get in touch with them, we can connect you to them. The second question has to do with Dr. Tariq, maybe you know. Are there any global knowledge waqfs that maybe they can synergize? Dr. Adil can...
Yeah, I again would actually echo the comments of my colleague, Herman. But this is very strategic approach, and I must congratulate you that you have taken the lead on that. Because for past 2 years, within the domain of World Congress of Muslim Philanthropists and ISESCO as one of our knowledge partners, we have been debating that this is one of the most critical area that Muslim philanthropists must work at. And that means building the endowments that provide perpetual support to the science, technology, and innovation. Because when we look at the index in the world of science, technology, innovation, and we look at the wealth we have, unfortunately, we are way behind. And in fact, there's a roundtable coming up, and I can share that information after the forum about it in 2 months, and that is specifically focusing on the same thing of actually building an endowment to promote the STI.
Okay, I want to shift over because I know the majority of people who work in charity in Saudi are women, but I don't see any questions from that side. Do you guys have nothing going on or no questions? I'm giving a chance. Anwar.
Anwar Abul Khair. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay. Anwar Abul Khair from Nabta NGO. I'm actually interested in turning or registering my MPO as a waqf. But I really don't know who to go to concerning this, especially given the rules and regulations in this country.
Can you shed some light?
Because I think none of us, we come from Saudi Arabia. So if you refer to Saudi rules and regulations, I'm afraid this is not something I can advise on. However, many a times I advise my clients to go into jurisdictions where charity is very well developed. A number of organizations would like to use Switzerland as a jurisdiction where they have a foundation. You know, Swiss foundations, they are very famous for this kind of activities. So if you're looking for scale in due time, it might not be a bad idea to create a Swiss foundation which has a particular Saudi focus or a regional focus in due time if you want to go on the GCC level as well. But I'm afraid Saudi rules and regulations, unfortunately, I have no idea.
So you can do a trip to Switzerland and establish your foundation.
No, but have you tried the Ministry of Social Affairs?
Okay. The one possible...
Actually, we did. We went through the whole process, but then they rejected us. Simply because we're not a charity, after all. We're a civil society group.
So there are no civil society foundations in Saudi?
There are, but they're all not registered under anything.
Can you give us their names? Just,
like,
no, just joking, just joking.
Okay.
Yes, number 2.
Hi, my name is Khalid Sindi. I have a question to the panel. We've heard today about a lack of focus or holistic approach or strategy to all these philanthropy efforts and initiatives. And my question is, ideally, who should take the lead on aligning all these initiatives, all these efforts, putting the strategy? Maybe we can refer to models that's happening outside of Saudi or outside of the region.
Herman, can you answer that and another question that I have in my head, which is what is the difference between foundations, philanthropy, and CSR, corporate social responsibility?
Okay. On the question on who should lead, very good question, and my honest answer is I wouldn't know, okay? Because you talk about a field where people are usually reasonably aversive to someone else telling them what to do, okay? And so having someone tell them what to do probably won't work. So my other way of answering this would be if people start recognizing via discussions on fora like these, but also potentially other fora, that focus is good and that, you know, you have tremendous amount of resources that are, you know, to some extent, I mean, it's fine, it makes people feel good that they've given, but from an impact point of view, you can question whether that was the right choice. And so the more people are aware of this, I think the more people will actually take initiatives on their own to make linkages between different foundations, different NGOs, to learn from each other and to potentially actually group funds or, you know, jointly select a topic. Like, and the topics, again, are not that difficult to pick. Take diabetes. I mean, a lot of foundations focus on health, okay, next to education. But in health, Saudi Arabia has clearly, you know, a problem with diabetes. And so why not group a number of organizations that, okay, would take it on them to say, look, why don't we engage on going to schools and talk about healthy eating habits and exercise and what have you, and then collectively also engage in saying we will follow through. We will start measuring, okay, first of all, the impact by, on an annual basis, people that, you know, 18 years older coming from high school, you know, what is the incidence rate, etc. That would be, I think, a fantastic initiative. And who could take the lead? Any of the foundations today that are active there. So I don't think it will work by someone or somebody saying we should all group and focus. I think it has to come from within. The difference between, let's say, philanthropy and corporate social responsibility, I think it lies in the word itself. Corporate social responsibility is essentially a corporation, a business unit or entity that gives part of its, let's say, profits or returns to society. Now, what you see happening in that environment is that, again, based on focus, those corporations tend to pick topics that are somewhat associated with what the company stands for, and I believe that's a good thing. So if this is a company that uses a lot of research, they will fund, you know, research. or if this is a company that is essentially, let's say, focused in one geography and has a lot of economic activity in one particular area, it might invest in a lot of social causes in that particular geography. And so, there is a return, so to speak, for the corporation involved, whereas philanthropy is much broader. And to some extent, I would argue, you do it not because you want a personal return, you want a return for society.
I have a follow-up comment on the question, real quick. There are two ways to initiate that process of change. And I think the easiest and the shortest way is adopt those principles in your own practice before you wait till a massive social change occurs, because to achieve that change, you need to have people, state, and private sector to sit together and work at. And that is how these things are successful. That may be a long way to go, but the shortest way and easiest way is when you start your philanthropy tomorrow, you have to make sure that you are putting in the new thinking and new vision into it.
Number 6.
السلام عليكم، خديجة عمر. كان عندي أطروحتين بسيطة هلخصها في نقطتين صغار. إنه بالنسبة للتنمية عن طريق التقنية، هو حلها بسيط في اتحاد، في شبكة اتحادات لقطاعي العام والخاص والمجتمع، بحيث إنه هو يسهل التنمية والعمل الاجتماعي والبر في نفس الوقت. هذه جزئية لفتة بسيطة. والجزء الثاني بالنسبة للتعليم، التعليم ممكن نعززه، التعليم ممكن نقدر نعززه عبر فيديوهات شروحات الصناعات الصغيرة، فيديوهات تشرح الصناعات الصغيرة والحرفية، بحيث إن هي تسهل للصغار والكبار في القطاع التعليم إنه هم ما يعتمدوا بس على النظري، يعتمدوا كمان على العملي، لأن هذا جزء مهم ما هو مدرج عندنا في السعودية. شكراً.
شكراً. Number 4.
I have 2 questions. My first question is to Dr. Humayon. Is there any example available worldwide where there is a special purpose vehicle that manages zakah as a syndicated fund? And part B of this question is that how do you maintain the liquidity aspect of that? Because zakah is almost always associated with the liquidity. It should come in and should go very quickly. And my second question is to Antoine, which is when you have multiple causes to target, how do you prioritize between causes? What is the criteria that you use?
At present, there is no such fund in existence, although some entities have been set up, but the funds have not flowed into them. So the attempt is to come up with a regulated entity which should manage zakat money in a professional way. Coming back to the second aspect of the question, how the liquidity is managed within a zakah fund, this is a very, very important question. And we have deliberated very carefully about it. The Sharia requirement is that this money should remain available for immediate relief as and when this is required. Hence, in the memorandum and articles of associations of this fund, this is put as a condition that as and when there is a call upon the assets of this fund, the assets should be liquidated as soon as possible to fulfill this need. The strategy, investment strategy of this fund is composite, i.e. it goes into a lot of assets, of course, very illiquid assets, some relatively less illiquid assets, and then liquid assets. So based on this strategy, it's fairly easy to come up with the cash as and when this is required.
I want to ask a question because you said something before about philanthropy benefiting projects, infrastructure projects like railways. How do you differentiate between the role of government and the role of charity and philanthropy?
Thank you very much. I actually believe that charity or charitable sector is huge. It has remained huge in the past in this part of the world, and it has a huge potential to play in the current societies as well. Especially in the Arab region, the country we are in, there is no taxation, individual income level taxation. Charity can be used as a fiscal tool. The governments, of course, they have to spend a lot of money on the social sector. And if a mechanism, and we have proposals for this, if a mechanism can be created to collect a lot of money from the people on a voluntary basis, i.e. they must contribute in a charitable way, that money should be put into endowments and awqaf. For example, if the government of Saudi Arabia wants to develop a railway, so that could be a railway waqf, and the money should come from the people who are contributing to that charitable and philanthropic part. Because now that money comes from the public, not from the government, or at least part of this comes from the public. This can be used as a tool for the fiscal management for a country like Saudi Arabia. Similarly, this can be used for a number of other activities, port developments. We can have port waqf or port trust instead of having just a port authority and so on. All kind of infrastructural projects can be financed on a sustainable basis through this charitable model, as long as we adopt a technology which allows the governments or any other bodies to collect small amounts of money from individuals, institutions, and corporates in big quantities, i.e. those small amounts, they sum up to billions of dollars.
Four.
There was a question.
السلام عليكم. محمد طه خياط مصلحة الزكاة والدخل. مرحبا. حبيت بس أنا أدخل مداخلة بدون سؤال. كما يعرف أنه أعمال البر في المملكة كثيرة جدا مختلفة أنواعها. أما بالنسبة للزكاة وتحصيل الزكاة في المملكة هنا فإن الموضوع تحصل مصلحة الزكاة والدخل المبالغ من المكلفين بدفع الزكاة اللي هي 2.5%. المبالغ هذه كلها تدخل في حساب تحت في مؤسسة النقد تحت رقم حساب، ورقم الحساب هذا يغذى به الضمان الاجتماعي وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية. ما يجلس في حساب المملكة ولا يعني في حساب الزكاة والدخل ما يبقى أي مبلغ بالنسبة لأنه عشان يستثمر ولا يكون في سيولة. كان الأستاذ بيقول إنه سيولة ولا ما يبقى أي سيولة. المبلغ كله يطلع على حساب الضمان الاجتماعي ويصرف في الضمان الاجتماعي. يعني على المثال السنة الزكاة والدخل يمكن 2000 وهذا حيكون في عنده حوالي 20 مليار بالزكاة، غير الضريبة اللي هي على الشركات الأجنبية أو ضريبة الاستقطاع الثاني. بس بالنسبة للزكاة هذا الموضوع حبيت أوضحه إنه المبالغ جميعها تحول على وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية تحت حساب خاص في مؤسسة النقد في الضمان الاجتماعي يصرف في الضمان الاجتماعي. شكرا.
Number 8 or 3? Is that 3?
Yeah, hello. My name is Faisal Tahir. I'm an entrepreneur and author of Reviving Islamic Endowment in its True Spirit. I have two interrelated questions. One, is there any supranational body in the world which is monitoring and regulating waqf around the world, especially after 9/11 scenario where all the waqfs are scrutinized, where the money going? Secondly, there is a trust deficit between the businessmen and the authorities which are collecting tax in most part of the Muslim world. Is there a way how government can be more transparent while dispersing their resources so that the trust can be gained by the business community? Thank you.
So, Tariq, you want to tackle that?
Well, I think what we are talking here, I'm not sure about the transnational body who's overlooking the work, but I think at national levels there are bodies, both in the United States and some of the other countries. But the question that how we can make the governments more accountable, I think it's the same principle that works for any policy reform you would like to have. There has to be a genuine demand coming from the people. And if we look at the Muslim world, exception few countries, There are several other issues that governments are badly failing, or they are actually falling behind in providing the security, in providing the basic livelihood and all that. So I am not very optimistic that something very soon will change until and unless there is a serious public demand.
On the this trust deficit side, the taxpayers, they don't like the idea of paying tax. If government is involved in charitable activity, this will have similar problems as well. Hence, a better solution could be organize the charitable and philanthropic money in the private sector, or what is known as the third sector, which is a more efficient and more cost-effective way of doing the things. And of course, the trust element would go away as long as different charities, they are competing with each other in terms of efficiency, in terms of achieving their social objectives. The money would go into the most effective, most efficient organizations.
Can you go here? Okay, we'll go there and then the next question.
Thank you very much. My name is Ambassador Mahmoud Saleh from the Kenya Embassy, Riyadh. I've got two small questions. The first one refers to the issue of accountability of the resources. Giving out resources is one thing, and accounting for the same is another altogether. So maybe I will require some comments on that one. The other issue is the issue of this giving out creating dependency syndrome. I come from Africa, and I've seen a lot of charity work there, a lot of philanthropic work there, but they're just creating dependency, a cyclical dependency syndrome. Can you also please comment on that one? Thank you.
Herman, can you talk about accountability?
Sure. The way I would answer is create total transparency. If people know, okay, first of all, where is the money coming from, where are you spending it, and what is the impact? It goes back to how do you measure impact? And again, the more specific the cause, the easier it is to be very clear on whether you have impact or not. Okay, and so that should be reasonably straightforward. Now, on the issue of dependency that you also raise, again, okay, I mean, you know the old saying, okay, if people are hungry, I mean, don't give them food, okay, but have them learn them to fish, or learn them to, to have agriculture, learn them to, to provide for themselves. And so I think there again, it goes to how do you measure impact? I think relief is, I don't want to belittle relief, but it's important because there's an immediate need. However, more fundamentally, I always believe that you need to go to the root causes and then attack the root causes of what is causing this, and have lots of initiatives that, address that issue so that you take away over time dependency.
Antoine?
Yeah, the first thing on the issue of accountability, I think it's a very, very key and essential issue. And it comes back to one point I made with other panelists as well about responsibility. I think that if you take the definition of philanthropy, it's a disinterested love for a human being. And I would plea for people who have a philanthropist view to be interested in the disinterestment, in the sense that give away as much as you desire to, but make sure that the person or the institution or the group you're giving to is doing proper activities with your money. Because from this accountability comes quality. And for being in the field, we are very well placed to see all the extravaganza of very noble initiatives, but that turns out to be, at best, counterproductive. At worst, that can do more harm than good. And I think that while donating money, it's very important that you make sure that up to the end, your responsibility is engaged, and you have to be committed to go to the end. I will try to answer both questions, the gentleman in the back and for His Excellency the Kenyan Ambassador. There is definitely dependency. Now, coming back to Doctor Without Borders, and this is where I answer your question, sir. Our main criteria is vulnerability. So we do look for the most vulnerable people, either because they have no one. I mean, in case of emergency, because we do have developed tremendous capacities to act on the spot very quickly, or because they are vulnerable because they fall apart from any social system, because they are segregated, either because of their race or religion or the disease they have. So these are the main criteria. Our amazing chance is that we have the capacity to totally on our own, independently, decide where and when we want to start a medical program. And we know that either we have a little bit of reserve or we know that people will fund it. So we can really define our criteria on our own. And I agree, in Kenya is a very good example. Unfortunately, as an organization like ours, we are really looking for the most vulnerable. We do have a lot of Kenyan staff, but this is another step that as an emergency medical organization, we cannot get involved too much into development or trying to put these people on the track of own development or creating their own company and so on. But it's a very key and important issue.
شكرا سعيد الله عندي. This needs, human need, we do have a human dilemma here as far as charity is concerned. I think in Saudi Arabia there is a lot of money is being given, but unfortunately the channels of distribution is not very well organized, and this is creating a kind of cyclic dependency, as previous speakers have mentioned too. And to me, charity is not the answer. There have to be other ways for societies to reorganize itself so that there can be an equitable distribution and nobody is left behind, especially in society, well-to-do societies like society in Saudi Arabia. Now, in terms of disasters, that is entirely different story. But in normal circumstances, we should be very careful not to create habits with some sector of people who find it so easy to resort to charity rather than to find work. And we should help them to find work. We should help educate them. We should, more than focusing on just giving them what they need at the moment, which we don't know what they are going to do to do with it. I have toured the world around, and I have seen, unfortunately, beggars everywhere. I mean, in rich countries and in poor countries. In rich countries, there are people who tend to take the money and go and have a drink with it or go and have drugs. And in poor countries, sometimes one...
Can I interrupt? Just, is there a question that you want to ask? Or?
So what is exactly, it is a human dilemma, and it has to, an answer have to be found which can alleviate the increasing of this human dilemma. Thank you.
So let me, Dr. Tal, let me ask you the question. You know, I work on Hafiz in Saudi, and when it was launched, it was clearly launched as an incentive to help job seekers seek a job. But the majority of the population has interpreted it as social welfare. How do you get a country, because you know the theme of the Jeddah Economic Forum is nation building. How do you restructure philanthropy and charity from social welfare to capacity building?
You know, I would like to invite everyone to think that when we talk about capacity, capacity does not mean that the person who's taking the money needs to build the capacity. I think the donor capacity deficit is also very serious. We have money, but we tend not to believe that we need also a capacity building. And what I mean by that is that when we are donors, we have to really understand that we can only counter the issues that are related to the accountability or the issues that are related to the dependency only if we infuse our business sense into it. That means you will not invest in any business that is not going to bring you any dividend. In this case, it will be the social dividend. In this case, it will be a social change. And what you do when you do your capital investment, you keep an eye open. You see how the things are going, how the sales are going, what are my bottom line, etc. But when it comes to the charity, we just do it so casually. You give it and then you don't ask about it. So I think from the donor perspective, it is very important that there has to be conditions attached with it. There has to be a mechanism of monitoring what is happening. So one is the donor capacity, and other element is to move away a little bit from the conventional way of giving to the strategic way of giving. And the excellency, as he mentioned about the dependency issue, happens when our giving is more relief oriented. It is a short-term answer. No, it has to be root cause prevention, or it's a prevention, or it has to address the root cause. So I think two things, the capacity of the donor as well as the giving only into the solutions that actually empower the people. They help them come out of that state of dependency versus the dependency.
Okay, I just want to, before we go with more questions, I'm going to put the survey question on the screen so we can everybody answer that. We have 10 minutes left. Can anybody read that? What is the area in which Saudi Arabia can contribute to local and regional philanthropy? If everybody can click. A is linking the needs of communities with charity of corporations. B is facilitating employees doing pro bono, mentoring, and voluntary work. C is greater institutionalization of zakah. Can everybody vote on those? Everybody have a voter? Everybody voted? Can we go to the women's section, number 6?
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. حنان الجشع. أنا لاحظت أن ضيوفنا الأكارم طبعا أظن ما عدا الأستاذ أنطوان غطوا الجوانب المالية للعمل أعمال البر بالرغم من أهميتها وأن كونها جزء كبير، لكن وين مساهمة عنصر العمل اللي لو استطعنا أن ننظمها ونستقطبها حنوسع قاعدة المساهمين في العمل التطوعي وفي أعمال البر. شكرا.
So, Dr. Tariq, I mean, how do we attract more talent, more volunteers, more human capacity to charity work?
Well, first of all, we should never underestimate the human power, human capacity, and the human hours that can be put into the charitable work or philanthropic work. And as I mentioned before in my comments, that this has to be promoted right from the early age and to the schools. And schools are extremely important. And I think that the community service, the volunteering, that has to be somehow incorporated into curricula or the school activities is one very essential step that we can take.
Okay. Herman, you have something?
I know the best, let's say, corporate foundations are the ones where the business is also putting its future leaders, let's say, its real top talent at the disposal of the foundation. And they see this as an incredible way to build leadership skills and to infuse, let's say, management discipline into the running of foundations. And so, you know, all the good corporate foundations have a very, very active participation of different members of their management into, let's say, the social dimension of what they're doing.
If you guys look at the results of the survey, it says 55% feel that greater institutionalization of zakah is where we should focus. Now, going back, I mean, we heard that zakah is going to Social Security. All of it is going to Social Security. Is that a good utilization of zakah? Professor?
Come again.
Is that a good utilization of zakah, spending on social security?
Social security, this is only one aspect. When we look at zakat as a whole, there are 7-8 areas in which this should be put into use. If social security, this is a dire need in a country, of course, certain significant proportion of zakat money should go into this category. But this depends on the environment in a country. If there is a dire need for only one category, the whole zakat of money can be put into that one. But the point I was trying to make, was that as His Excellency mentioned, that actually right now the zakat money is collected and it's put into use immediately, right? This goes into this social affairs department or whatever. But we need to bring this asset management function into it, which should generate returns on a sustainable basis, which should go into a number of activities, including social security.
Okay. Number 3.
بسم الله. رمز القدسي باحث. أحب أسأل الدكتور طارق في عندي 3 نقطات. إيش أهم حدث كان لكم في 2011؟ وليش نشاطاتكم في أفريقيا نشاطات خجولة؟ وهل هناك قنوات اتصال بينكم وبين أهم الجمعيات الخيرية في المملكة؟ شكرا.
إيش كان أول سؤال؟
I think we, in terms of 2011, is a turning point for the organization in terms of that we are promoting a new culture of pooled funds, which means we are trying to make sure that we are addressing the problem right from its root. And as you know, the 2011 hunger was one of the very unfortunate highlight of the year in the African Horn. So our approach was that while there are a number of humanitarian organizations providing relief to the people who are hungry, we have to do something simultaneously which is more of a preventive nature and more of a sustainable nature. So the launch of Hasana Fund, which has been created as a trust fund in collaboration with Islamic Development Bank's Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, can be called as one of the highlight. In terms of whether we have approached to the Saudi philanthropies, we are right now working out the legal frameworks of that, and hopefully in this year we will be approaching to them.
Okay. I have a question for Professor. So what is the minimum amount needed to create an endowment? Like, let's say I wanted to create an endowment today. What's the minimum amount I can put in?
Minimum endowment, there is no definite answer, but this could be $10,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever you want to have, and it runs into millions. The minimum is not important. I think important what can bring sustainability into the activities you want to target. For example, if you want to target promoting education by way of giving scholarships to the talented people, then you must have the size of the endowment that gives you an annual return, which at least gives you an amount which can be used for giving a full scholarship to one individual. So this depends on what is the rate of return on the assets in which the endowment has invested. So this is, I think, a number of considerations can be taken into account. However, if your area of focus is providing a very small kind of activity for children, in that case, the endowment size could be small. People, they have used some several thousands of dollars to several millions of dollars to create endowments. For example, I'm in the process of helping University of Cambridge to come up with an endowed chair in Islamic finance. And their minimum requirement is 25 million pounds sterling. So this is the minimum for them. But depending on what we want to do, the minimum size will differ.
Okay. Is everybody going to open up an endowment? Inshallah. Number 2.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sami Ahmed. I'm a financial consultant. After listening to everything today, it seems like the missing link is a platform to connect the haves, like companies, foundations, investors, and donors, with the have-nots, such as the poor, entrepreneurs, nonprofits. They would be exchanging whatever is needed, like social investment, donations, volunteerism. I remember a couple of years ago, Muhammad Yunus floated the concept of a social stock exchange. And in the ensuing years, there's about a dozen models which have emerged worldwide in places like Brazil, Lisbon, Singapore, London. My question is, do you think that market-based mechanisms like this are the way forward, where measurement, transparency, professionalism can all be institutionalized?
Who wants to take that?
Right. You want?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. I have strong belief in the market-based solutions. However, when it comes to giving and philanthropy, given the geopolitical situation, it would be difficult for the market only to come up with a solution which is acceptable to all the global stakeholders in the market. Hence, I would say that although a primary role can be played by the market, but the governments and the regulators must come up with a governance framework which makes sure that the finances as well as other objectives, they are taken care of for the best interest of the weaker stakeholders in the activity. So the role of government cannot be discounted altogether, although market-based solutions, they have their own advantages.
Okay, we have 15 seconds left, so I just need to keep to the time. So what I would like to do is thank the guests for the input. I found it very enjoyable. I learned a lot today. I hope you did as well. I apologize for didn't get all the questions, but I would encourage you to ask your questions directly to the audience. There's one last question to answer on the survey, if you can put it on the screen. In your view, what is the greatest challenge facing Saudi philanthropists today? Having a clear focus, raising sufficient funding, finding the right talent, or executing its programs? So if you just answer that question, and we'll be done. Thank you.